Hey guys, it's Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and I bought a $5 typewriter. I know, exciting stuff. So I go thrifting a lot and antiquing a lot, and I'm always on the hunt for the next project in my collection, whether that's for a machine for me to keep or something for me to put a little bit of effort in and resell at a pretty affordable cost for my local area. I'm always looking for the cheapest deal that I can find, and sometimes I run into repeats of machines I already have at very, very low costs, and I just can't say no. So I was out antiquing with my mom. We were actually looking for props for one of her shows. We were in a storage shed outside of an antique store, and she saw a washboard up on the top layer of this rack. I climbed up to get it for a prop for one of her shows because we're weird like that. And as I was looking down, I realized that underneath me was this white square-shaped piece of luggage. Now, if you've seen my videos before, you'll know that I tell you to always check luggage walls because you never know what typewriter case might be there. And as I opened this piece of luggage, because it looked kind of square to me, I realized inside there was a very beat up and dirty typewriter. Now, when I opened the case, and I had trouble opening the case to begin with because it was broken, I realized it had this gold front panel. And I recognize this gold front panel because I already have a typewriter with a gold front panel. This is Marigold, my 1958 Quiet Tab Deluxe Underwood Portable Typewriter. Such a mouthful. But as I was looking at this new typewriter in the storage shed, I realized it was the exact same model. Now, I don't like to buy repeats unless I'm looking to resell them. You've seen my Royal 10 series, you'll know that I have a lot of trouble when it comes to repairing those and getting rid of them, and I just become too invested, and then I have two of them and I don't know what to do. In this case, I was looking at this typewriter and I was going to pass on it. It really wasn't a question to me, but I was so intensely curious to see what the guy would actually be asking for this very broken looking dirty typewriter in the corner of his storage shed. And I said, "How much would you take for that typewriter?" And he said, $10. And I walked away. I was like, you know what? I've already got one at home. I'm going to pass on this one. And thank goodness he stopped me, because then he said, "You know what? I really want rid of it. $5. And I couldn't say no. So I brought home my $5 typewriter, and initially I thought that I would use it as a parts machine. I had recently had an issue with a spring breaking on this typewriter over here on the back tab mechanism. I had ordered one online and it just didn't fit my typewriter. It didn't really work. So I was looking for a very specific spring to replace that one in this machine, and I thought that I could use this exact same model as a parts machine to fix my already mostly operational Quiet Tab Deluxe Golden Touch typewriter. But instead, as I went looking through this typewriter and going for that spring, I realized that everything on it worked perfectly. It didn't need any adjustments, just a little bit of a clean, and it would be a great typewriter. So then I had a bit of a conundrum, because now I have two working typewriters and I can't take the spring off of it because it's just too good. So I decided to cannibalize another typewriter in my collection, my We Are Memory Keepers typewriter, which you've probably seen a review of on this channel before. Hated by most collectors, not really a great typewriter, and it's a modern remake of the typewriter. I decided to just steal some springs out of that one to replace them in my Marigold typewriter over here, and that worked out great. So now I have a parts machine and I don't have to feel bad about it, and it meant that I could also go through the process of cleaning and repairing this new typewriter to my collection and get it up to snuff. So the first thing I did is the same thing I do on all my typewriters when I first get them. I use the air compressor and mineral spirits to clean out the internal portions of this typewriter, just to get out the dust. It was really dirty on the inside of it. It kind of looks like a cat had curled up inside of it and just left hair everywhere. So I did have to do quite a bit of air compressing and use of mineral spirits to just clean out the dirt and the gunk on the inside of this typewriter. And then I went to work on actually cleaning the exterior of the typewriter. And if you want to see a little bit about that, check out my Simple Green cleaning hacks video. I took this typewriter from this to this. And the biggest change on this typewriter was actually the case. When I got the case, it wasn't attached on the back. It had bowed out on the side as if it had been dropped or something had been set on it and kind of ruined the side of the typewriter so it wouldn't fit down into the base. And it was missing a handle. It just had this paracord kind of roped around the front of it, hoping it would never fall off. So I decided to, first of all, clean up the case, and then I decided to take a steamer and actually steam the side of the case to get the wood of the case warm so it would bend back into place. And then I used clamps and a piece of wood to kind of straighten out the side of the case a little bit so I could hopefully fit it back into the base and it would snap close. I let that sit overnight and it was kind of successful. Here's a little bit of footage of that. So this is the case for the Underwood Deluxe, and as you can see here, there's a bend in the case itself, and it kind of looks like there's a bit of a split right down here in the middle. What I'm gonna do is heat this wood up with a steamer and then try to bend it back into place and dry it overnight with a board to kind of straighten that out. This could go very poorly. As you can see, there's other damage on the case to begin with, so we have to be kind of careful. Now I'm looking at the base, and I think it's slightly bent as well. So I'm gonna go try to find some more working clamps, another piece of wood. And while we have the steamer out, we might as well do the base. Can't hurt it, right? Famous last words. There I was, minding my own business, just grabbing a piece of wood to put on this base, and look what I ended up grabbing. It's the Tolstoy version of the writer's block. Oh, that's a callback. Okay, I'm really hoping I didn't just mess up by loosening up all this glue and everything and then it's going to ruin it. But if it does, it was only $5, so price of an education, as my dad likes to say. So I'm going to let these dry for a while and hopefully they turn out squarish. That'd be nice. So it didn't bend it in exactly into a straight line, but it got pretty close, and I can actually now latch the case closed, and I don't have to worry about carrying it and it popping open all the time and dropping out my beautiful new typewriter. I also had to replace the handle, so I went onto the Antique Typewriter Collectors group and asked them if they knew anybody who had luggage handles, and they know a lot of people. So I was able to find this luggage repair site to actually purchase a handle to attach to the top of the typewriter case. I know that some people run into this problem and they don't know how to solve a missing typewriter handle on a case. I've actually had this problem before as well, and what I ended up doing was buying a handle and like drilling new holes into the case. I didn't want to do that on this one. I was just looking for the handle, not the brackets, and you have to be really careful when you're looking for a new handle for a typewriter case to make sure that it's going to fit onto the case topper the same way you already have the brackets on the case. So in my case, the brackets were parallel to the sides instead of perpendicular. So I had to find a case handle that would actually fit onto the case at that parallel side rather than latching on in a perpendicular and then just stringing between the two of them. So I had to find a very specific handle to fit my case, and I found this lovely brown handle that latches on with kind of like a belt mechanism, and that works great. And so now the case is fixed and the typewriter's working, and now I have two of these typewriters and double the trouble. So I decided to learn a little bit more about these two typewriters in my collection. I love the aesthetics of these machines. I think it's one of the most photogenic typewriters to ever have been created. I just love the looks of it. But I don't see many people in the typewriter community talking about Underwoods from this period of time or featuring them on any of their social media pages. So I was kind of interested to learn a little bit more about these machines specifically. So both of these typewriters are from 1958. They are a couple thousand serial numbers off from each other, so this one over here is just a little bit older than this one, but they're made in the same year, and they're both made by Underwood in 1958, which is before Olivetti bought controlling shares in the Underwood Company. By 1963, it was a complete merger, so it was Olivetti Underwood, so these are still under the Underwood brand line. There's a couple of things I really like about the design elements of these typewriters. I think they're just so gorgeous, and I also really like that on the front of them, if you hit the Underwood logo, it actually releases the lid of the typewriter. Now, it's not spring-loaded like the Futura typewriters, which is my favorite thing in the universe, but I really like that integration of branding on the front of them and how it increases the functionality of the typewriter lid itself. I also really like the looks of these typewriters and the colors specifically. So they have this beautiful gold front panel and gold rim around the keys, and that's to kind of promote the idea of the golden touch design, which is Underwood's key differentiator in the market on their portable typewriters. On the sides, it's this grayish color, and I didn't know what it was called until I found this advertisement from about 1958, and I learned that this color wave is actually called driftwood, which I think is a really interesting name for this grayish color. I think it matches really well with the gold design as well. Now there are other typewriters from the same time period that have similar casing to them. So they also had the Underwood Universal and the Underwood Leader. So they have similar body designs to them, but they just have a little bit of a different functionality in the keyboard, and not all of them have this gold front. A lot of them just have the gold rimming around the keys. In addition, both of these typewriters have one of my favorite typefaces. So the typeface is the actual type that is used on the paper, and the typeface is put on these type slugs, which are the things that have the little letters. They go up and press the paper, and sometimes you can get different typefaces. Not only can you get different sizes of typefaces like Pica and Elite, you can also get different kinds of fonts on those pieces as well. Now, the typewriters from the Underwood line were branded as having a Continental typeface, and it's a little bit more straight and boxy looking, and it also has the serifs, and Ted Monk of the Typewriter database actually describes it as like a slab serif typeface. It is kind of geometric looking and a little bit more like retro tech than something like the normal typeface you would have on a Smith Corona, which has a little bit more rounded numbers and rounded letters. It's a little bit more boxy looking, and I kind of really like that on these two typewriters. When I first got Marigold over here, I was so excited to have a different typeface, and I really liked the look of it. So I was even more thrilled when I found out this new typewriter also had that same typeface on it, because I didn't know how rare of a typeface that was. It was branded as Continental by Underwood, but when Underwood is actually purchased by Olivetti in the 1960s, they renamed that typeface as Stymie. And I like that as a name for the typeface a whole lot better than Continental. So I'm going to call it Stymie typeface. So I really liked that both of these machines had that same typeface, but what is interesting is that they actually have different sizes of that same typeface. So this new one to my collection actually has the Pica font version, which is just slightly bigger than the Elite sized version on Marigold over here, which is the smaller version of that same typeface. So they both have a lot of the same functions. They're both from the same year. They both have repaired cases. They're both in pretty okay condition, and they both have that really cool typeface design with just a little bit of difference in the size of typeface. Which begs the question, which one am I going to keep? Because I can't possibly keep both of them. It's just not allowed. So when I'm comparing these two machines for which one I want to keep in my collection, I have a couple things that I need to check and go over and ask myself. I did first start by doing a type test between these two machines, and that's where I learned that the typeface was a different size on both of these typewriters, which is a good point. If you're buying typewriters and you already have a model of one at home, always check the typeface, because you never know which typewriter might actually have the script typeface, and that might be enough of a differentiator in that particular model for you to want to pick up that typewriter, especially at the right price. But the size difference between the two of them is just not enough to justify having both of them. So I did sit down, do that type test just to see what other repairs I'd have to do on them. So here's a little bit of footage of that. Now I did notice there are just a few keys on the newer typewriter that I probably have to go through and clean a little bit more. The S key, the A key, and a couple of the numbers on the number row just need a little bit more mineral spirits and cleaning. So that is something that I'll have to put into that typewriter, whether I decide to keep it or sell it. On Marigold over here, I also have a problem with the C key. If you've seen my whiteout test video from Christmas, I kept getting the C type slug stuck in the ribbon vibrator. I didn't know what happened. We've tried bending it a little bit just by micro movements, trying to get it to fit better into that ribbon vibrator so it doesn't get stuck. It's still not perfect, so I do have to do a little bit of adjusting on that. And the internal parts of this typewriter are just a little bit more rusty than the newer one that I've purchased. That's probably because it was set somewhere where it got wet. The case itself has also been a little bit musty. It's in the beautiful plaid case design, which I really love, but it smells kind of weird and it's starting to rot off the fabric on the front, and I don't know how to fix that. The insides are just a little bit rusty, which is why I had to replace that spring. Not as much damage on the inside of the newer typewriter. There is, however, a little bit of a discoloration between the two rims around the sides of the keys. So on Marigold over here, it actually is a little bit of a brighter gold, and it looks a little bit more worn away on this newer typewriter, which is such a silly thing to point out. But when you have two typewriters that are so similar, you're looking for anything to differentiate the two of them to decide which one is the better one to keep in my collection. I also know that this case, if I decide to keep it, I would probably still have to do another pass of that steaming and trying to bend it into place because it's not exactly square yet. It's closer and it latches, which is what I was going for, but it's still not like pristine. I don't know if it'll ever be pristine. So I've got quite a conundrum. They both type the same because they're both the same model. Not everybody loves that Underwood feeling from the 1950s, and personally, it's not a great typewriter to sit down and use for a long period of time, but there's just something about it that I feel really attracted to and am kind of really in love with, and I can't get rid of it. I love them both and I don't know what to do. So in the meantime, I did decide to name the new $5 typewriter Midas because that was Marigold's father in Greek mythology, and that is why I named this typewriter Marigold. So this one is Midas, and I have to decide what to do with them. So please leave me your opinions down below. Which typewriter should I be keeping? There aren't really that many differences between the two of them, but I cannot have both. Don't put that as an answer. Not allowed. So comment down below which typewriter you think I should keep. Should I keep Marigold or Midas? And it may actually weigh into my decision on these. If you're interested in more typewriter content, I also have more videos on this typewriter YouTube channel. I also have an Instagram at just.my.typewriter, which you can check out more updates for my collection on a quicker basis. I want to thank you all so much for watching and remind you that you're just my typewriter.